America is not involved in every war. Plenty of stuff. I mean, what's America doing in Myanmar?
We're involved in the main ones. Whether it's funding, money, it's
Depends
resources.
what you see as the main ones. I mean,
what are the two main ones right now? The
two ones that have the most attention is different.
What's costing more than those two?
Well, the Syrian civil war that's lasted the last decade is costing far more lives.
I'm talking. Hang on. I'm talking like 2 years.
The Syrian civil war that's gone on for more than a decade now.
Right.
More people have been killed in that than have been killed in every single war involving Israel and all of the Arab armies in the last 80 years. So it does seem actually that people's attention is sometimes very clearly on certain issues.
Patrick Bet-David brought on Douglas Murray onto his show on Valuetainment and the PBD Podcast. And last one, they got into a heated debate about Patrick Bet-David possibly being part of the establishment. But in this clip here, they get into something also very, very interesting and very heated, where Douglas Murray starts to defend the Ukraine funding from the United States. Patrick Bet-David obviously pushes back on that because it's ridiculous how much money we're sending over there to Ukraine. But as someone who is part of the establishment and Douglas Murray, of course, he would defend us sending billions and billions of dollars over to Ukraine to fund a war that, honestly, in my opinion, we just shouldn't even have any part of. But, the NATO stuff, I understand why we're kind of obligated to be involved. At the same time, it's just, I don't like it. I wish we were just to pull out of NATO. I wish Trump was successful in that. Anyway, let's get into this clip here from Valuetainment and the PBD Podcast of Patrick Bet-David destroying this woke idiot. I will say woke. People coming at me because I called Douglas Murray woke in the last one. Everything that I've heard this guy say has been woke, in my opinion, and definitely part of the establishment. So let's get into what Patrick Bet-David has to say in response to Douglas Murray defending the Ukraine funding and talking about how Putin, is probably planning to invade further into Europe.
What's your position with war? So right now,
What's my position with war?
Let me explain what I mean by that. So right now, like with the Middle East, okay, so you got elections, you got Trump, you got Kamala, you got all this stuff that's going on right now. And, some people are saying, hey, man, we got to see Trump gets elected. Ukraine, Russia's going to be done. Everything going on with Israel and Palestine, Gaza. He's going to stop that overnight, And then from there, let's not get involved in businesses we have nothing to do. What's your position with that? What position should America take with everything that's going on in the Middle East?
Well, I'd say it's another of the trenches that is available for us to fall into, which is the temptation to retreat from the world. America is the most important country in the world by an incredibly long way. Not just financially, not just militarily, culturally, in terms of ideology, in terms of the spread of the ideas that come from America. Mm-hmm. I see no scenario in which America can retreat from the world as it is and for the world to remain as it is. And I know, because people I know on the American right as well as on the American left, always at the risk of falling into the temptation of American withdrawal from the world. And I always have the same thing, which is, has America made mistakes? Of course. Has it got involved in things it couldn't deal with? Afghanistan? Absolutely. But that is not an argument for America stepping back. Because although America should be judicious in where it steps in the world, if it has no involvement in the world, other people will. And if America doesn't want to be the dominant power on the world stage, then it will have to cede the terrain to China or the Communist Party of China or whoever else. I'm interested, by the way, particularly on the right, I'm interested in this fall into the isolationism at the moment, because it's very interesting that those people want America still to be the foremost country in the world, but don't want to be involved in the world. Interesting, that.
Don't want to be involved in every war.
No. America is not involved in every war. Plenty of stuff. I mean, what's America doing in Myanmar?
We're involved in the main ones. Whether it's funding, money, it's
Depends
resources.
what you see as the main ones. I mean,
what are the two main ones right now? The
two ones that have the most attention is different.
What's costing more than those two?
Well, the Syrian civil war that's lasted the last decade is costing far more lives.
I'm talking. Hang on. I'm talking like 2 years.
The Syrian civil war that's gone on for more than a decade now.
Right.
More people have been killed in that than have been killed in every single war involving Israel and all of the Arab armies in the last 80 years. So it does seem actually that people's attention is sometimes very clearly on certain issues.
So why do you think that is?
A range of things. In the case of, I covered the Ukraine war. I was embedded with the Ukrainian armed forces when they were retaking Kherson or Mykolaiv.
I think it's kind of like arguing semantics a little bit when it comes to this. I think Patrick Bet-David made a good point, but he kind of messed up by saying all wars, because of course you can go and pick out small little wars that are happening. I'm not saying that this is like not like a nothing burger war or anything like that. I'm just saying like there's a ton of wars happening around the world, civil wars and like little things that are happening that America isn't directly involved in, or that you can't really prove that America is involved in. But my stance, and I think Patrick Bet-David's stance would probably be close to this as well. I don't want to speak for him, but I think it would be close to this, is that we shouldn't really be involved in anything at all, any wars at all. And that's my stance on the whole thing. And especially whenever our own country is in turmoil. I mean, just look at what's happening, man. It's getting crazy. Like it's been crazy. It's getting really scary now what's happening. Not only do we have a bunch of illegal immigrants just flooding through the southern border at will, whenever they want to, we also have crazy crime problems. We also have insane inflation problems. We also have just had our second assassination attempt on a former president and possibly a future president, running a presidential candidate for this next election. Things are getting crazy. It's becoming like a third world country, seeming like, and I don't know if that's by design, but I would probably venture to say it is by design. Somebody is pulling the strings to make this happen. So I don't think we should be really too worried about what's happening in other wars going around. It's not every single war that we're involved in directly, but we're involved in too many. One is too many, in my opinion.
From the Russians. And so I've seen quite a lot of that war up close. That one is a very straightforward one. I don't believe that Ukraine is part of Europe, but it's awfully close. And if you go to the Baltic states, as I did again, 18 months ago, I suppose, a year ago, if you go to the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and so on, they are really worried about Russia. Really worried. They have, enlistment and so on. If you go to the Central and Eastern Europe, simply the further east you go across Europe, the more you find a genuine concern about this. If Vladimir Putin had succeeded in making it all the way to Kiev in 2022, Europe would be shaking in its boots even more than it currently is. It would have, and it would have been an unbelievable destabilizing effect on the world. It's not the case, as some people pretend, that Vladimir Putin is only interested in Ukraine. I know that because I've been to the country, not the state, the country of Georgia when he tried to invade that, 2008. So the idea that Putin simply has Ukraine in his sights is not true.
If you enjoy content like this, then make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
And should we get into World War III over this? Obviously not.
We're flirting with it.
I hope not. I hope not. But should he be allowed to gobble up nations, whatever you think of them, by the way, and then this is a point at which a lot of people on the right will say, well, Ukraine is so corrupt and this and that and that. Let's say if I agreed with all of that, nevertheless, not good for world stability to allow Russia to invade nation states, particularly ones whose security that we had agreed to whose borders we'd agreed to secure. I mean, that was part of the deal that Britain was involved in as well with the handing over the nukes in the 90s. So Ukraine is a war that is deeply troubling Europe and NATO, and therefore America does have interests in that.
So you're for that war? You're for the money and the funding that we're giving to that war?
We could go into all sorts of the details of it. I have criticisms around the edges about the way in which the funding has happened, the way in which the arming has happened, the training and so on. But to date, Vladimir Putin has not been able to overrun all of Ukraine. And I think that's a good thing. And this has happened, by the way, with American funding, but no American troops. And if people don't like the idea of American troops on the ground around the world in order to secure world peace and the global order of nation states, if people don't like the idea of American troops being on the ground, what else have you got available than helping and arming other countries' troops who are willing to fight.
How about just defending our own borders? I think that would be pretty sweet. Personally, like, look, I'm just going to be completely honest with you, okay? I really don't give a shit if Putin invades every single country. Could I get in trouble for this? I don't even know if I can get in trouble for this. I literally don't care if Putin invades every single country outside the United States and takes over them all and conquers them all. I don't give a shit. I live in the United States. I live in the US. And as long as he doesn't come here, we're good. I'm cool with it. I don't care. Personally. And I think you should think the same thing about your country, wherever you live. I know most of you watching are in the United States, but wherever you live, you should think the same thing. I don't give a shit what happens in the US. I live in the UK. I don't care. As long as Putin invades the US, that's cool. We don't need your help, and you shouldn't need ours. You should be able to be self-sufficient and defend yourself. That's how the real world works, man. Nobody's saving me from being a loser. If I want to be a loser, if I want to go become a crack addict, nobody's going to save me. Why should we be saving every single country around the world? I know we have financial incentive in a lot of these places, but that's how I view it. I've never really said that before. That's just my stance on it. And maybe that's cold-hearted and a bad way to think. I'm open to criticism about it, but that's how I feel about the whole thing. I think it's BS that we have to spend our tax dollars, especially once you start making, you become an adult, you start making real money. The amount that you get taxed, and also I am self-employed, so the amount that I get taxed is a ridiculous amount. And just knowing that I get taxed that much is, number one, BS in itself because of where the tax dollars go. Number two, it going to other countries to fund war, to fund bloodshed in wars that I don't even support, I don't even think they should be happening, is BS. So I'm okay, if that's the argument that we have to stop Putin from invading, I'm not saying that I want him to do that. Of course I don't want him to do that. But I'm saying if the two options are, number one, we send billions and hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine and these other countries to defend them from Putin, or the other option is Putin invades every single country except for the US, I'm taking option two. Go ahead, invade them, bro. Let me keep my money. I don't care. And the other countries should think the same thing about me. Maybe, like I said, maybe that's crazy. Maybe I'm insane. Maybe I'm childish for thinking that. Let me know in the comments. But let me know in the comments what you think about this whole PBD podcast with Douglas Murray defending the funding of Ukraine. What do you think about my stance on the whole thing? I'm sure a lot of you are going to get very mad at what I just said, but that's just the truth. That's how I really think about it. I don't want him to invade everything, but I'm cool with it as long as I get to keep my money. Let me know in the comments what you think about this clip here from the PBD podcast of Patrick Bet David kind of going in on Douglas Murray for defending the funding of Ukraine. I think it's insane, man. I understand his logic a bit, but I don't agree. Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole PBD podcast and valuetainment clip.